All right, Chinch.
Whoa. What do you got? You're not by yourself there. What's going on in this case?
No, I'm not by myself, and I'm going to introduce this guy. He doesn't like this stuff, but I'm doing it anyhow because we're good enough friends. I can do that.
Okay.
Won a World Series title, three-time pennant winner, 3-time manager of the year. Now get this one too right here. 22 years managing in the big leagues, 1,769 wins, which is 17th all time. The greatest manager I've ever played for, and there's been a ton of guys that have played for this guy that would say the exact same thing. In my opinion, the greatest manager in baseball history, Jim Leyland. What's up, Skip?
Hey,
How you doing, brother?
up, man?
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing all right. Thank you.
So much for
Mr.
coming over.
Leyland.
No problem.
This is the first time we've had a guest at my house.
Yes.
So this is great. We both live in Pittsburgh, and it's
That's
kind of
awesome.
been a nice thing. Skip, what are you doing?
Hold on real quick,
Okay.
Sean. One of my favorite things, Mr. Leland, when we have guests on and they see us setting up the shots, is watching them look at Sean and be like, can you believe that Sean Casey's has all this computer software and is doing his own television show right now?
That's why it took an hour and a half to set it up.
Well, one thing I know I've messed with Skip is that this guy plays golf like 7 days a week. He might be going on a senior tour with Smoltz here soon, but he's all over the place. He's doing his thing. But I know I'm messing with your golf game today, Skip. So I appreciate you joining us. But
No problem.
what have you been doing? What are you doing? What is Jim Leland doing nowadays?
Well, you're right. I play a little golf when I'm here in Pittsburgh, and then I still work for the Tigers, so I travel between Erie and Toledo, look at our AA, AAA club. Friday night, I'll be in Detroit to speak on the field for the celebration of Miguel Cabrera and his 500th home run. Not to mention his 1,800 RBI last night and 3,000 hits soon to come.
Jeez.
So I'm going up for that. Miggy played for me for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I stay pretty active, and
Yeah.
I do just a little bit of work for the commissioner, a little advising once in a while, but not too much, to be honest with you. Yeah.
It was funny. I was thinking about you golfing. I remember a few years ago we went golfing at Chartiers at your club, and first off, I didn't know you were as good of an athlete because I only seen you with your spikes on in the dugout. I know you were as good of an athlete as you were on the links, and I think you must hit 14 fairways in a row. It was unbelievable. It was like boom. I'm like freaking 240, 230, 250 down the line, right? And that was the time when I didn't know if I was lefty or righty playing, right? And I remember pulling out my lefty driver. And I can't remember the guy we were playing with. It's one of your really good buddies. But I get up there on 16, and I'm like, Skip, I'm gonna hit one lefty. You're like, yeah, go ahead, let's see what you got, because I was playing righty. And I hit one, and roll my hands over, it goes behind me. And I remember you telling me, hey Dale, you believe this shit? This guy was a career 300 hitter in the big leagues.
You're not going to believe this. That guy, I talked to that guy this morning. I told him I was doing this. He said you actually whiffed one on a tee box, and that's when he said to himself, this guy hit 300 in the big leagues against a ball that's coming 90 miles an hour. He just whiffed a golf ball that is sitting completely still on a tee and whiffed it. How is that possible? And I said, well, nothing surprises me with the case. So, but that is absolutely all true. We were just talking about it, laughing about it this morning.
Oh my God, it's so funny. It was so great. But I remember that. That was a great time. I appreciate you having me out there. And
You will not be back. I guarantee you will not be back.
Oh my God. I want to go back with you a little bit. I want to talk Miguel Cabrera. I want to talk all that stuff kind of down the road. But I want to go back to you a little bit. Grew up in Perrysburg, Ohio, which is right outside Toledo.
Right.
Looking into your life, your dad was a huge influence on you. Can you just go back to that a little bit and tell us your upbringing in Perrysburg and also your influence from your dad and also getting...
Yeah, actually Perrysburg, when I grew up, was a village.
Yeah.
That's how small it was. It was about 5,500 people, 5,500 people. And today it's a pretty big city.
22,000
Yeah,
now.
it's 22, 23,000 today. So it's totally different than what it was. 1 square mile when I grew up. My dad was a factory worker. I was 107. And my dad was like a semi-pro pitcher.
Yeah. Was he?
Pretty good, yeah. And so, he had a lot of influence on me. But I think the most influence he had was he was just, his theory was always like, you work hard for a good day's pay. That's how you go about it. You got to work for everything you get. There's no shortcuts. I actually used that when I managed, only I added championships. I used to always tell my teams there's no shortcuts to championships. And I really kind of got that from my dad, you know. So, you know, it was a great place to grow up. It's much bigger now. I still have some brothers and sisters there. I lost a couple brothers and one sister, but still have family up there and go back. I'll go through there Friday on my way to Detroit and stop, you know, and see my brothers and sisters. But just a great place to grow up, you know, Northern Ohio, and you know, big on football, basketball, baseball, like everything. And I was kind of a big frog in a small pond. We didn't, you know, the competition wasn't great. I wasn't a very big guy. I was basically just a decent little athlete in a small town, to be honest with you. That's pretty much what it was.
How about like back then you were drafted by the Tigers, right?
No draft when I signed.
No draft. Okay.
Yeah,
so could you tell that story about that?
Yeah, I was actually, I got invited to play in some games from kids from Detroit, Ohio, and Michigan, and I want to say maybe Indiana, up in Detroit. And I didn't really realize it till later, but the Tigers ended up signing me. Like I said, there was no draft at the time, so I was just signed for $400 a month, no bonus.
Oh my God.
Nothing. And I realized later on, once I got to spring training, I got a little smarter when I could figure out what was going on. Basically, Sean, you know how they always need extra catchers in spring training.
Oh, yeah.
They got to warm up pitchers. They basically just signed me to warm up pitchers in spring training, and I happened to make a team. One manager happened to like me and took him with me, and you know, 58 years later, I'm still in the game.
Oh my God, that really is unbelievable. Thinking about that. I want to stay on the dad theme for a second before we get back to your minor league career. Your son, Pat, and Kelly, obviously your kids, you and Katie have raised two great kids. Obviously, I've gotten to know them a little bit, but I've especially gotten to know Pat. And he's a bench coach, right, in A-ball,
right,
with the White Sox now.
Yeah, he's with the White Sox now. He played a while, just he wasn't good enough.
But eighth round pick out of high school.
Yeah, and you know, he wasn't good enough. At the end of the day, that's the way it boils down to. Had a lot of injuries, but you know, that's no excuse. A lot of people do, but he just wasn't going to be good enough to make it to the big leagues, which was fine. You know, he's kind of following in my footsteps as far as coaching and hopefully managing. He wants to manage. Hopefully he'll be managing the minor league soon, and I hope it works out for him. He's actually a lot smarter than I was.
Kid,
I
don't know about that, Steve.
Yeah, he's much smarter than I am, but he's not quite as instinctive as I was. He's a deeper thinker than I was, and maybe not quite as quick on his feet as I was, but much smarter. And he knows all the new stuff that's going on in baseball with the technology and all the stuff that's being put out there now. He understands all that, and I think he does a good job of combining that stuff. So he's got a good feel for what's going on.
Sean, if I can interrupt there, one sec, sorry. Staying on this topic, we like to ask this of all the guys, you know, former players who have kids that are playing Little League and in high school and whatever. And I wonder, as Jim Leyland, the manager, if like when your kids would come home and say, oh, my coach put my elbow up like this or whatever, or your grandkids go out and they come back and their stance is all screwed up and they said, my coach taught me it this way. Does Jim Leyland go to the coach, or have you done that and say, hey, leave my kid alone, I know what I'm doing here? Or how do you?
Yeah, not really. I really try to always take the attitude that, you know, I could probably fix something in a situation like that with my son without offending the coach. Because I always took the attitude that any guy that was willing to give his time after working a hard day's work, probably got a family, and was willing to dedicate his time to go out there and be with the kids, even if he was telling them something that wasn't exactly right about some particular phase of baseball, I could overlook that. So I always respected those guys because they gave their time, they cared about the kids, and they weren't supposed to be professional instructors. They were dads. They were dads that coached on the weekend or coached a 6 o'clock game on Tuesday night. So I think you have to keep everything in perspective.
What were the biggest values that you passed on to Pat? Well,
I told him, you know, that Pat, anything you're going to have to, that you do want to get, anything that's worth accomplishing, you're going to have to work for it. And I go back to the shortcut thing all the time. I really believe that. And it's a little bit different in today's game than it was for me, because today there's so many coaches and personnel in the minor leagues. It wasn't that way when I came up. There was, there weren't very many minor league managers, and there was maybe one pitching coach who went all around the minor leagues. Now they have a pitching coach at every team. They have a hitting coach at every team. So it's going to be hard to move. But I think the best advice I've ever given him is, Pat, don't tell people what you know, show people what you know. And that's the kind of train of thought that I tried to give him. Just show people what you know. Don't tell them what you know.
Yeah. Well, I love that. For you, Skip, going back to you talked about, managing in the minor leagues and how it was different back then. Can you talk about that? Your transition from a player, you said, can you talk? We were talking the other day about Johnny Bench, and you said you ran across him in the minor leagues. Like,
I did. I played against Johnny Bench. I remember him. I'm sure he doesn't. But anyways, at any rate, it was great. And when I saw him, I knew that, this is what they look like. I'm in big trouble. So, but I loved it. I loved playing in the minor leagues. And to fast forward a little bit, when I started managing the minor leagues, it was different.
Yeah.
The managers today are pretty much scripted what they have to do. And when I managed in the minor leagues, and I think that's one of baseball's faults right now, you have to let your managers manage. It's okay to have all this information and all this knowledge and everything, and it's okay for them to dissect it and look at it and everything, but you have to let your managers run the pitching staff, make the moves in the game. You cannot be putting the managers in a spot where, well, we told you this is what you should do, this is the percentage, everything is measured today in today's game. I don't think that's good. When I managed, and I'll give you a good example, I loved it in the minor leagues because you knew the farm director in the organization was going to tell you, these got to be your 5 starting pitchers. These are the guys you got to start. These are what we feel are the prospects. They got to play every day. Okay? So make sure you're pitching those guys. Make sure the prospects are playing every day. But anything else you want to do with your team, you manage your team however you want to manage it. And for instance, when I would bring a prospect out, like for early work, I would always bring one of the non-prospects out because I wanted him to get extra batting practice. I wanted him to feel part of the team. And that's how you mold that team together, things like that. So, I always handled my pitching, even in the minor leagues. I mean, and nowadays they say, well, they can only throw so many pitches, this and that. Well, managers aren't fools. You got to trust your manager. Give them the responsibility. You give me a good prospect, I'm not going to burn him out by throwing too many pitches or anything. You have to believe in your managers, but you don't need a pitching coach telling you every second, well, he can only throw, now they have some rules of 20 pitches or 25, 30 pitches an inning. They're done for the game.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's changed, and I'm not arguing right and wrong or indifferent. That's not my business, but it's just totally different than what I manage as to when hopefully Pat's going to get into managing.
Yeah.
Are you more of like with the minor league systems? Are you more into having the system in place where, we take 01, we do this or whatever, like how the A's and the Giants have done things over the last few years? Or are you more, give me the player and I'll teach him how to be a big leaguer, as far as like your philosophies when you're in the GM meetings?
Well, I think the organizations always have a philosophy, and they emphasize that all the time. But basically, organizations have the same philosophy. They talk about somebody that knows something more than somebody else. You go to spring training, every team in baseball does cutoff and relays. They do rundowns. They do pickoffs. They do bunt plays. And they say, and one of my pet peeves is when a new manager takes over a team and says, boy, we're really going to work on fundamentals. For God's sakes, the manager for the last 20 years worked on fundamentals. They did everything the same in spring training. If you go to every spring training, it's almost a clone. I'm not saying that some of them aren't a little better than others, and maybe the way the personalities of the manager, the staff handle things. But basically, the fundamentals of baseball have never changed. You hit it, you pitch it, you catch it, you throw it. I mean, that's always been a pet peeve of mine when they say, like, somebody else has got something that somebody else doesn't have. It's like all the analytics stuff today. Well, the team with the best players have the best analytics. Right. That's the way it works.
What do you think, about, because it's funny, because we've talked about this before. I know when I was playing, I retired 2008. You were 2013 was your last year, so that's not that long ago. We got this. I mean, I got tons of stats. I got tons of film on guys. I could go watch any left-hander I wanted out of the pen that I thought I was going to face, or I could watch any closer that was going to come. I could watch the starters' last 5 starts on the plane, all that stuff. But I do know as a player, when I got in the batter's box, man, it was tough enough to see the ball and hit it. It was tough enough in the field, to get ready to position myself to get ready to make a play. So, I don't know. Like, I know, especially working at MLB Network, sometimes we get so into the analytics, the BABIP and the WAR and the OPS plus and all these different, wins created plus, all these stuff. We get into all those numbers. What place for you, Skip? What place are those numbers as a manager, and what place is it? Man, I got to go with a gut instinct.
Well, I think number one, we had basically as much information as you could possibly have when I managed. Now, in fairness to everybody, there is more information today. By way of the computer, you get stuff faster, you get more information. There's much more information out there today than there was when I managed, yet we had everything that there possibly was when I managed. So, I think what you have to do is you have to siphon out that information. You have to get your coaching staff and yourself as a manager to relay that information to the players, the information that you think is going to affect us winning or losing this game, or whether it's going to affect us developing a player, or whether it's going to affect us as we go out to scout a free agent player like a high school kid. You get all that information and you see what's usable, and there is stuff that is usable. I'm old, but I'm not old school. So there is stuff that's usable, and I think you put all that stuff together, and at the end of the day, then you put that into your own personality as a manager. When I was a manager, a young manager in the minor leagues, I listened to all the veteran managers that I was around in the minor leagues. When they'd come in the clubhouse after spring training games, they'd be talking strategy, talking situation, and I always listened. And I never said anything. I was a baby. I was a young manager. So, but what I did was when I listened to what they said, and I took the stuff that I liked, and I put it in my back pocket, and I eventually put it into my own personality. And I took the stuff that I didn't like, and I just discarded it because I really didn't believe in it. So, it was very interesting how my career came about that way. And even today, I'm all for information. I just think there's some of the stuff that's just reading material.
Yeah.
It's not really beneficial as far as helping you win a game.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sit there and read a book before the game, but some of the stuff is really good, and some of it's probably overdone.
Yeah. You talked about like some of the managers and the guys that you listened to in the minor leagues. Like, who were some of the guys that, like, you look back that really influenced the way Jim Leyland managed?
Yeah, well, Les Moss, who managed the Tigers at one point, Stubby Overmeyer, who pitched for the Tigers, Wayne Blackburn. Al Fedorov was the best manager I ever had. He was the first manager I ever had. He passed recently, but it was just those guys, and then George Kissel from the Cardinals. I used to go during the instructional league over to his house in St. Pete, and he would talk. And I was managing for the Tiger instructional league team. He was with the Cardinals, but he'd invite me over. We got along good. He liked me. I liked him, and I listened to him. And I would go over there and have sessions with him at night, talking about different strategy and things of that nature. So, you try to pick as many brains as you can, and then you like I say, you take the information that you think is valuable, but at the end of the day, you have to put that into your own personality.
Yeah. 18 years you were in the minors as a player and a manager, right?
Yes.
1981, Tony La Russa comes looking for you and says, "Hey, we'd like you to join the White Sox organization." I think you were his bench coach?
Third base coach,
yeah. Which is a big deal. I mean, the third base coach, if anybody's got a lot of heat on him after a game, the third base coach is not a responsibility.
To me, when the game starts, the third base coach is the most important coach you got.
Right.
Some people disagree with that, but they think the pitching coach. I think the third base coach is the most important coach you got because he can win you a lot of games. He can steal you some runs. He can cost you some games. But anyway, to go back to that real quick, I managed against Tony La Russa in AAA in 1979.
Okay.
He was a young manager. He had managed, I think, a half a year in Knoxville or something. He came to AAA, and we played against each other. And during that season, he went up and got the big league White Sox job. Well, I stayed in Evansville, Indiana, where I was managing against Tony. That was the Tigers AAA club.
Right.
And I was there 79, 80, and 81. And in 81, Bobby Winkles, who was his third base coach, was going to go to the front office like as a farm director. So he called and asked me if I would be interested in being a third base coach. And that's how that all came about. I joined Tony then in 82, 83, 84, and 85 prior to going to the Pirates.
Mr. Leyland, speaking of coaching and the way you guys came up, you and Tony, like you mentioned, do you have any advice for coaches anybody who wants to be a coach or a manager now, because it seems so much different, because they are trying to hire people who have more analytic sense, or who will take the lineup card. You hear that a lot. But how would you advise somebody who's not going to make it in the big leagues, or a former player now, as to how to start making a journey towards becoming a manager like you did?
Well, I think the most important thing is, once again, is don't try to tell everybody what you know, show them, and don't make it about you. You have to put your ego aside when you become a coach. It's all about the players, and it's all about trying to help players, whether they be amateur players or professional players, and get used to, when things work out pretty good, the players get the credit, which is the way it should be, and when they don't, the coach is going to get the blame, which is the way I guess it should be. But that's the way it is, right, wrong, or indifferent. But don't get hung up in your own ego. It's about the player, and it's not about you. Because sometimes guys are former players, pretty big names, pretty successful major league players. And, when people see them, they're really more noticeable than the players. And you want to make sure that the players are at the forefront and you're in the background.
Well, it's funny looking back, like, at your time with the White Sox, and because I know your relationship with Tony La Russa, I obviously saw that in the 2006 World Series, talking about the players and the managers coming together. What did Tony teach you, as that third base coach when you were with him in Chicago, that maybe helped you as a manager when you went on to Pittsburgh?
Well, to be honest with you, I'd coached third a lot more than Tony. In fact, I had managed a lot more than Tony had.
Right.
So what Tony really helped me with was adjusting and handling big league players, because I had only handled minor league players. So he really helped me with handling the big league players. And the other thing he did, which was so advantageous to me, and I appreciate it forever, was after every game, he made it available for me to come in his office and listen to his press conference. See the kind of questions that were asked. Maybe you had a tough situation that night, how that would be handled. Maybe putting you on a spot about a player or something. So I got to see that firsthand, and that was really, really advantageous to me. Because you meet with the press twice a day, every day, for a long time, 6-7 months, basically, 6 months for sure. So just those little things that he showed me and helped me with were. And during the game, he was fearless. I mean, he managed 9 innings, and I put that in one of our rings, play 9 innings, 9 full innings, because regardless of what the score was, he managed 9 innings all the time. He was going to manage. He was going to push no matter what. And I thought that was really good. And I used to talk to my players about, hey, we got to play 9 full innings here, every night, 9 full innings. And there was just so many things that he's helped me with. Obviously his record speaks for itself. He's second all time in wins. So, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for it. And I've met a lot of great people over the years, and managed against a lot of great managers, and fortunate enough to manage a lot of great players. So it's worked out okay for me.
It's funny because playing for you, one thing I always respected was, I always felt like when the media would talk to you after the game, like, you always took a lot of heat for us. I always felt like you never really put it back on the players. You took a lot. Probably you could have done that a lot more. You took a lot of heat. Was that kind of your philosophy?
Well, I think the one thing you want to do is as a manager, you want to try at all costs never to embarrass a player in the paper.
Right.
You just don't want to do that. I mean, and there's times when I would get a little frustrated in the press because they say there was a routine fly ball hit the right field and the right fielder dropped it, and they'd come in after the game and somebody might say, well, do you think he should have caught that ball? I said, well, were you watching the game? You know he should have caught that ball. Every writer in here knows he should have caught that ball. I know he should have caught that ball. But why should I say it? You saw it. Right. They hit a fly ball that should have been caught. But why should I have to be quoted on it? That's not necessary, So, but the media was good for me. They were good with me. I enjoyed it. I mean, we had our moments, like when you're in the heat of battle, there's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
I mean, the major leagues, big leagues, is about winning.
Yep.
That's what it is, and that's on the manager. So there's times when you get a little testy as a manager and a little frustrated, and I think so. But I don't know. So it's just a tough job in the sense that I'll give you a good example. I released Kirk Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
I was also Kirk Gibson's first manager.
Yes.
So it was very interesting. So, and I'm just bringing this up to make a point. Somebody said to me, was it hard to release Kirk Gibson? And I said, not really. And the reason I say that is I told him, I said, it was harder to release an 18-year-old kid in the minor leagues than it was to release Kirk Gibson, who had this great career, MVP,
right.
World Series, made a lot of money, great guy, great player. So you couldn't feel sorry for him.
Right.
You could feel sorry for an 18-year-old kid that you had to look in the eye and say, hey, you're never going to get a chance. You're just not good enough. You're not going to make it. And you sent that kid home with tears in his eyes. That's a little bit more difficult than sitting there talking to somebody, that's made millions of dollars and earned it and been a great star. It's a real touchy thing there, as far as managing. Managing is much more than just the game.
Yeah. And
the game is the real fun part. The other stuff is really the hard work. The game's the fun part. But the other stuff, the hard work, is trying to understand a player that's struggling, somebody that maybe the sickness in their family, somebody that, is having some kind of issues, whatever it may be, and then dealing with the media twice a day and dealing with your general manager and everything. Managing is a big job. It doesn't get the credit it deserves.
Right.
In today's game, I think a lot of people think you can just put anybody down there to manage. Give them a piece of paper with information on it, put them down. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Right. Well, one thing I always admired about you, Skip, was that, it was funny. It almost felt like you were like, it was like cheers during batting practice. I watch you work the room. It was like almost like your party. Like you come over to me, hey, Case, how's it going, mate? Hey, it's going good. Boom. And there you go. You're on Maggie Ordonez in right field. Bam, you're off to Craig Monroe in left. You kind of worked the room and almost did it every day, which was, and I know being in the clubhouse with 25 guys, like there's so many different personalities in that room. Like, how were you able to work a room like you did in a clubhouse?
Well, I think I did a lot of my work in batting practice. And like you said, I'd go around and talk to players out in batting practice, and not necessarily long conversations. Just, hey, everything all right? Family all right? How you doing? Hey, I know you're struggling a little bit. You're going to get it going. We're going to get you out here, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it may be. Talking about whatever. Tell a joke. Do anything to have some type of relationship with the players, And in a lot of cases, I've done it, but in a lot of cases, I tried to avoid at all costs, and I have done it, but I tried to avoid at all costs bringing a player in to my office for disciplinary reasons and shutting the door, because when you do that, you embarrass him in front of his peers a little bit, and the media knows something's going on, so they're saying, oh, so-and-so's in there. So what I did in most cases, I used that time during batting practice. For instance, I wasn't happy with the way you were performing or the way you were hustling or going about your business. Right. I might go out to first base and I'd say, hey, Case, you got to pick it up here. I'm not satisfied. You're not running the ball out. You're not playing hard. Hey, I'm not going to put up with that. And then I might tell you a joke or something, and people see us out there laughing. They don't know anything going on.
Right.
But I got my message across, and nobody else knows that I got my message across. So you eliminate ever trying to embarrass a player. Now, I've had some arguments and blow-ups with a player, obviously, but for the most part, I always try to take that time during batting practice to get my message across to an individual.
Yeah, I follow up on that real quick, Sean.
Go ahead.
I was thinking of something like this. Bobby Bowden was coaching in a championship game back in the day, Florida State, and Sebastian Janikowski was his kicker at the time, and he missed curfew the night before the game, which means he wasn't technically allowed to play in the game. And Bobby Bowden came out and he goes, it stinks, but that's my kicker. He's going to play. If he was the 45th man on a roster, I'd probably suspend him. So my follow-up to that is, how do you deal with, you have Miguel Cabrera in there and you have a 20-year-old kid. Do you not treat them the same, or do you treat everybody the same? Or do you have to deal with personality individually?
I'll tell you exactly how I handle that. And I always felt that I treated every human being the same, and they were just as important in the other guy. When you had a star player, I always told them, you don't get any special treatment that nobody else gets. They're all going to get treated the same. However, what you do get, you get a bigger paycheck every 2 weeks because you've earned it. You've earned that paycheck. You've earned more money. Your salary's much bigger, and you deserve that. And that's respect you get because you earned that yourself. But as far as being treated as a different as a person or doing special favors for you that I wouldn't do for somebody else, I would tell them I'm not going to do that. I will not do that. I'm going to treat the 25th guy the same way I treat the number 1 player on the team. But your perk is, because you've earned it, every 2 weeks when you pick up that check, yours is a little nicer.
Well,
great.
I know as a player, you know, when there's certain guys on teams and managers would let maybe a star player get away with something that other guys wouldn't. I know there was a lot. I mean, I know for guys there was a disrespect factor. Like, man, are you kidding me? Like, he's treating that guy different than this guy, and he's starting to lose the clubhouse. So I must admit, I did appreciate you. I know, we always, people always go back to the Bonds incident, or like, I know sometimes with Pudge Rodriguez, you had to say a few things, or different guys, superstars. But I did appreciate that about you as a player, to say, like, no, man, this guy's got 25 guys' backs. And the superstar players know that, hey, they're part of the team. And at the end of the day, we all kind of have to
I love the players. I love the players. I love the star players. I love the 25th player on the team. And it wasn't that you were being disrespectful or anything. It was just that when you think about that, you didn't look for trouble with the superstar. But as a manager, you cannot run from that trouble. If you have it, you cannot run from it. And I can tell you this: if you do have an issue with a superstar and you handle it, and he handles it, and you handle it properly, you might be mad at each other for a day, but because you're honest with each other, it's over after a day. If somebody's lying to each other, it's a lifetime disaster. But I think when you think about this, I always felt like if I have an issue with a superstar, I have to handle it, because I'm going to gain the respect of 24 other players. If I handle it, I'm going to show the other 24 players that, hey, they're just as important, and he's not going to get any special privileges, and I can't let him walk all over me. I just can't do it. You never wanted those issues. Right. But let's face it, when you're with somebody for 6 months a year, on the planes and the club buses and stuff, things happen.
You're going to have them.
And I love the players. I understand. I think one of the things that helped me as a manager was the fact that I was such a bad player, because I understood when guys popped up with a man on third and one out or struck out. I understood that, because I did that myself. Right. I realized how hard the game was to play. So I love star players. I love star players, and I would treat the star players great. But you just can't treat them as human beings any better than you do the 25th player on the team. That just won't work, because you're going to lose the respect of 24, 25 guys, and really the guy, if you cater to him and kowtow to him, he really doesn't respect you anyway.
Exactly.
So I think you just deal with what comes up, and you deal with it to the best of your ability. Yeah. And sometimes you're not always right. I mean, the thing with Bonds was a little mistake on my part. It was a little mistake on his part. And I love Barry Bonds. We're very close friends. I just went to San Francisco not long ago to speak for when they retired his number. So I love Barry Bonds, believe me. And I love Pudge Rodriguez. And we had a couple of issues where we had to talk things out a little bit. Yeah. But that's part of managing. Yeah. That's what you have to do as a manager. Yeah. I mean, it's good to be nervous, but it's bad to be scared.
Yeah. How though? It's so true. How those, Skip, for you, like, obviously not having that big league career, right? And you get to that position where you got to confront a Barry Bonds. Like, where does that come from? Does that come from your dad? Does that come from your upbringing? Where is that? Like,
I think it comes from your upbringing. I think when and I've made mistakes, but Barry wasn't wrong about all that thing that happened that day, and I wasn't either. We were both kind of a little bit of a misunderstanding, to be honest with you. That but there'd been some stuff leading up to it, and for whatever. But I think that I really think, like, my dad was one of 16 children. Right. My dad had 15 brothers and sisters. Wow. I had a lot of aunts and uncles. And this sounds corny, it sounds crazy, but it's true. And I had 6 brothers and sisters, plus my mom and dad. So, and there was a family of 10 lived right next to us. I really believe this helped me. As a young person, I watched. One aunt had a different personality than the other aunt. One uncle had a different personality than the other one. One of my brothers had a different personality than the other. So when I got into pro ball, that helped me. And sometimes we have people from different cultures. Yeah. You have to understand that. I went. It used to be in days when some of the kids from Latin America would come over. You didn't think much of it. Okay,
Right.
they're here. I got to deal with it. They don't really understand, and you didn't think much of it. And you probably weren't really as aware of it as you should have been.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But when I went to Venezuela to manage one year, and all of a sudden the shoe was on the other foot, and everybody's talking Venezuelan, and I don't know, up from down.
Right.
Up to, man, the shoe's on the other foot. It gave me a whole new perspective. And I always tried to go out of my way to make somebody that came from a different culture comfortable, to let them know that you cared about them, because sometimes you just took it for granted. Oh, he's going to talk to the Latin players. He's not going to talk to me. I'm not going to talk to him. He's just going to play, whatever it may be. And it was a whole new perspective when I went over there, and I really think that helped me in my career to learn the different players, even the ones, like I said, that came from different cultures and things of that nature. It helped me understand people much better. And I think it all started because of the big family my dad had and all the different aunts and uncles and all the different personalities, because, what makes you tick might not work for another player.
Yep.
I mean, you have to have general rules for your ball club, but you may have to go about it different to get the results out of you, as opposed to Jay Bell or whoever it may be. Placido Polanco, you might have to talk to him different than I have to talk to you to get the same results. So I always thought that was interesting, and I loved it. But because so many players are different. Some players come in, Placido Polanco come in every day, never said a word, sat down in his locker, did the same routine every day. He's one of my favorite players I've ever managed. Never a problem. Just, other guys come in more boisterous, telling jokes, whatever, yelling a little bit, whatever it may be. And I always thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, like I said, there's so many different personalities. And I thought that was fascinating too, with the Latino players that would come in. I'm like, wow, some of these guys, because I think about it, when we went over to Japan in 2008 to open the season.
Right.
I remember being over there. I was like, am I on Mars? Like, I cannot communicate with anybody. And I thought about that as a Latino player when you come over as a young kid and you don't know the language.
Right.
Listen, minor league baseball, pro baseball is hard enough. Big league baseball is hard enough, let alone you don't know the language.
Right.
But to have a manager that understands that.
I think baseball's done a good job now, where they brought like the kids over from Dominican or whatever, and they have classes for them and they teach them English and things. So it's come so far, which is great. It's great for everybody because, as you know, there's so many great players come from over there. So it's actually worked out great for everybody.
Yeah. I want to go right now to your first, managing job with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And you said a little bit ago, hey, big league baseball is about winning, right? When you came in '86 to the Pirates and they weren't really good. I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I was when you had come here, I was 12 at the time. Yeah. And, you were coming in and the team wasn't that good at the time. Can you just tell us about what your thought process was of taking that job? Well, and where was it going to go?
It's very interesting. They had lost 100 games in '85. Yeah. And in '86, they hired me as a manager. And Chuck Tanner, who's one of my closest friends, who's passed away, went to take a job with the Atlanta Braves. But I get the Pittsburgh Pirate managing job. And, here I am, this minor leaguer. Nobody knows me. I think they put in the paper, Jim Who. And which, my father-in-law eventually got me a license plate that said Jim Who on it. But anyways, I always tell the story. I was so pumped up. But I went into spring training and I had some veteran players too, and I told the coaches, we're not gonna try to push ourselves on these guys, not tell them what we know. We're gonna show them what we know. Go about our business, solid, strict, fundamental baseball, stuff that makes sense. That's what we're going to do. And I was so pumped up. And, because we were going to open up, I go to my spring training. We have our spring training. And I know we're not very good, but we're going to open up against the Mets and Doc Gooden in Pittsburgh. This is going to be my first thing. So I always tell this little story about opening day. I'm so pumped up. And I think we're playing, it's a night game. And I think, so I always tell everybody how we were really bad and people knew we were bad. So I go down to the store in the morning and I'm going down to get a quart of milk. And I got 2 Pirate tickets on my dashboard. And when I come out with my milk, somebody had smashed my windshield and left 2 more tickets. That's how bad we were. Now that's obviously that's a joke, but I mean that's how it was. I mean it was something else. I mean like the season started. Would you like an autograph? No, thank you. The old stuff about what time's the game start? What time can you get here? And then the PA announcer would say, "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Here's your lineup for tonight." I mean, it's but it all worked out. The Mets beat up on us, 86. That's the year they won the World Series. Yeah. They beat us 17 out of 18.
Wow.
Yes, I go to the World Series, and just as a manager to observe. I'm in a hotel in Boston, and one of the writers from Boston says to me, "Jim, are the Mets that good?" I said, "No." And he said, "How can you say that?" I said, "If they were that good, they'd have swept us." And so, anyway, but it was funny. Davey Johnson would sit there, and I'm over there working my tail off just to try to win a game. But, pacing up and down, we're holding them for 6-7 innings. We got a chance, And then Davey's sitting over there like this. And then Strawberry did a 3-run homer.
Howard Johnson.
But we caught him. We got better. And then opening day in 1990, we opened up against the New York Mets in New York, and we beat them 12-3.
Wow.
And we went on to win the division that year, and that was our first division title. We clinched in St. Louis.
Wow.
So we turned it around on them, but they were awful good, and I have the utmost respect for them. They were a great team, and they just had a 30-30 thing on them.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I just watched the first episode. They were crazy, too.
Yeah, they were good.
They were good.
They were good. They were baseball players, and I had the utmost respect for them. But it was a lot of fun, and that's how my career started. And I think won my first game, not me, but we won our first game that I managed against the Cubs. I think 3 or 4 games into the season or something. But and it worked out fine.
Well, can we go back to those teams? Because those are the teams I kind of grew up on. Like, obviously, I was growing up here in Upper St. Clair, big Pirate fan, going down. Always like going to Buck Night because get $1 hot dog, $1 ticket, sit in the upper deck, $1 Coke. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. But can you talk about the guys that you managed? Because there were some great players here in Pittsburgh with Bonds, who came in 87, I believe. Bobby Bonilla, Van Slyke, Jeff King used to drive in 100 every year. Right. Jay Bell was a Gold Glove shortstop. Right. Doug Drabeck won the Cy Young Award. John Smiley, Zane Smith, Randy Tomlin, Spanky LaValliere was winning Gold Gloves. Right. Andy Van Slyke in center field. And you had some great players here. Can you go back to those teams and just talk about the Buccos a little bit?
Well, Sid Swift really did a good job as general manager. Every trade he made, he'd bring back a pitcher, no matter what kind of pitcher it was. And then we traded Tony Pena and got Andy Van Slyke, Mike LaValliere, and a guy named Mike Dunn.
Yeah.
And this was funny because when I got the job, the day they took me down to my press conference, the gentleman that took me down said to me when I got in the car, he said, "The first thing you have to do is make Tony Pena captain." And I looked at him and I said, "The first thing we have to do is trade Tony Pena." And he said, he about drove off the road. And he said, "You can't do that. He's our most popular player." And I said, "You lost 100 games and drew 736,000 people. You ain't got no popular player." Now, in reality, so I want to make sure this all gets in here.
Yeah.
In reality, to clarify everything, it was a compliment to Tony Pena because he was the one guy that had value to bring something back.
Right.
And we needed to kind of start all over again. So it was actually a compliment to Tony Pena. It wasn't a criticism of Tony Pena. It was a compliment because he was the one guy that we had we knew that could bring something back. Right. And a year later, on April 1st, we traded Tony Pena during spring training to the St. Louis Cardinals for Van Slyke, LaValliere, and Mike Dunn. And you're right; those teams they were good. We fell a little bit short. We just didn't quite get over the hump. We had a couple of chances. We we won the 3 straight division titles. We had great battles with the Braves. Of course, everybody
who were loaded. I mean, they were loaded.
But everybody knows about the heartbreak game. But I thought the year before, 91, we actually had a better team, and that's when
that was Game 7.
Avery and Smoltz. Yeah, we came home with a 1-game advantage, and Avery and Smoltz. Avery pitched the game of his life.
Well, Avery might have been master, and he got hurt. He was unbelievable stuff.
Good. And then Smoltz who was the best big game pitcher I've ever seen yet to this day. So But it was fun. Good players, really good players, good guys. Exciting time in Pittsburgh, and turned it around. And then, of course, everybody knows that we just couldn't retain those guys because, I give you this. This is hard to believe. In 1986, my first year as Pirate manager, our entire payroll for the entire team was $10 million.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my goodness.
Way. $10 million.
In
That'll get you a
1986.
utility player now.
Yeah, that's league minimum.
And later on, it was going to get up to about 34, 35 million. And that's when we got to the stages where we couldn't keep Barry.
Right.
We couldn't keep some guys.
Yeah.
But those were great days. I love managing in Pittsburgh, and I still live here today. I've been here ever since I came here in the winter of 1985. So it's been great. It's just a wonderful, wonderful city. And of course, the Pirates are struggling yet, and hopefully that's going to turn around at some point. But just a great place.
We got to go back because you managed, in my opinion, the greatest player in Major League Baseball history. I mean, this guy was as special of a player as I've ever seen. Can you talk about managing Barry Bonds? First off, when he came up, when he was number 7, right, and didn't get out to the Hall of Fame start. We all knew he was gonna be good, but also like who he became in the Pirate uniform before he went to San Francisco.
Well, he was you could see from day one that you had a star in your hands. It was just it was a rising star. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen.
Right.
I let him off for a lot. I wanted him to see a lot of, some people say, well, why'd you lead him off? Well, I wanted him to see a lot of pitches. I wanted to get him up there more early in his career, knowing that later on I was going to move him down to the 3-hole or 4-hole, which is what I did eventually. But I wanted him to get some exposure to that major league pitching all the time, and, he was so graceful. The one thing that he was a little short was his throwing arm was not the best. But Bill Verdon, a former great Pirate outfielder.
Love Bill Verdon.
Right. Well, he worked.
I was scared of Bill Verdon.
He worked. So was everybody else. But anyways, he worked with Barry, and Barry became the best defensive left fielder I ever saw. Now, and I'm not looking to argue with anybody.
Right.
I'm just making a point. He was the best left fielder I ever saw. He could do everything. And, the first year or so, he had a little tough time driving in runs from third base with less than 2 outs. As you know, it takes time for guys to learn how to knock in run. But this was just a star in the making, and you knew it was going to be a big star. It wasn't just going to be a star player. This was going to be a superstar. Right. And, because of economics and everything, I think we might have offered him $25 million. I think he ended up going to San Francisco at the time for $42 million, $17 million difference, a lot of money, Right. So, I knew we weren't going to be able to keep him, but, I love managing him. I mean, he played hard. He played hurt. He was just a great player.
Yeah.
Could be a little brash at times to other people, to be honest with you. Some people had a little tough time with him, but really a good heart. And he and Van Slyke and Bonilla were a great outfield.
What an outfield.
Andy in center and Bobby in right for a lot, and then Bobby played third some. And Barry, it was just, it was a treat to manage those guys. But Bonds was, you can arguably make a case that he might have been the greatest player of all time. A lot of people are going to disagree with that, but he's definitely in the top 5. But if you look at his numbers, people want to talk about his numbers all the time. I mean, you can make a case.
Yeah, no, you can make a big time case. I mean, he was as special as I've ever seen. And I tell you what, being over at first base, people would always say, "Hey, was it ever scary over there?" I go, "Yeah." When Richard really gets on first and Bonds is coming up, it's really scary. And I remember one time, Steve, I come off the base, he hit ball, he's in there, throw him inside here, wham, hits me a rocket. I just literally I didn't have kids at the time. I was like, oh my God, he almost took off my cup. I literally caught the ball. I didn't see it. To this day, I didn't see it. That's how hard he would hit the ball. Just never off balance, always on time.
Well, he was one of the few guys that could take that pitch right in here inside and hit it out of the ballpark and keep it fair. Yeah. Most guys would hook that ball foul. Right. Barry would bring the hands in and hit it and then keep it fair.
He choked up, even in Pittsburgh. Why did he do that?
He just better back control, he felt like, and better quickness for him, But, so much for not being able to choke up to hit home runs.
Right.
Yeah. He had a few, and he choked up from the first pitch on from the first day I saw him play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So your time in Pittsburgh after 92, Bonds is gone, Bonilla is gone, Van Slyke stays around for a couple of years, but you end up moving on to the Marlins in 1997 with Dombrowski, which I thought was great. That was kind of your. Can you talk about that going to Florida in '97 and the start of your relationship with Dave Dombrowski?
Yeah, I was talking. Well, Dave Dombrowski and I started a relationship. He was working for the Chicago White Sox way back when I was a coach.
Okay.
So that's where we kind of met and became friends. Well, then, but in '97, I talked to 2 or 3 teams about. I was interviewed by 3 or 4 teams about taking a job with another organization, which I was offered a couple jobs. I'm not boasting, but I'm just saying I was offered a couple other manager jobs. But I decided to go with the Marlins because they were National League, and I'd been in the National League. I knew it better. I had managed without the DH. Now that's so So I decided. I had known Wayne Huizinga, the owner, and of course I knew Dave Dombrowski and Carl Barger, who had been at Pittsburgh, and I decided to go to the Marlins, and it turned out to be a good decision because we won the World Series. And a lot of people were upset with me in Pittsburgh when I left, but I could see what was coming. I mean, I was going to be next. After a while, I mean, that the manager's going to go. I mean, and that happened. I mean, they hired Gene. He did a great job here, but of course, it had to be somebody's fault. Let him go. They hired Cam Bonifay. So what wasn't the manager, then it had to be the general manager. It just
Lloyd McClendon.
It was a tough cycle, and you knew that was going to happen. And I actually had planned on staying in Pittsburgh, and I told him I was going to stay. But when Kevin McClatchy came in, he said that they were going to maybe go out and get some midline free agents, but we couldn't spend anything big. When I knew that, but then they decided that they were going to just start all over again. And that's when I made the decision to leave, which to a lot of people were criticizing me for it. And I understand it, but, you got to remember something. When your peers are telling you, Jim, you're going to have no chance to win there.
Right.
You're a competitor. You're going to have no chance to win there. And, you're going to get tired of that, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It just happened. That was just kind of the law of the land at the time. And so I didn't want to leave Pittsburgh. I was living at my own house 6 months out of the year and going on a road trip and coming right back to my own home. I didn't have to get a house somewhere else or anything. I didn't want to leave Pittsburgh. That's the last thing I wanted to do. But it turned out to be the best thing for my career.
Yeah.
Well, did you know? Sorry, real quick. Did you know going to Florida what that was like? Hey, we're all going to get together for a year and go for it, or was that something that progressed?
No, I thought we were going to be good for a long time. David signed a bunch of guys to really good contracts, longer term contracts. Wayne Huizinga owned the team and was not going to sell the team. And it's really a great story. Tough story, but a great story. So I could sense that something wasn't quite right. And at the end, and Wayne called me one day and he said, Jim, I need to meet you when you come off the road. I'll be out at the airport. There's an officer. We talk. He said, I decided to sell the team. He said, I just don't really think this is a good business. And, I had bought a home down there. And so I said, Wayne, I understand, and he felt bad because he said originally he wasn't going to sell the team. And it wasn't like he went back on his word. He just said, hey, I'm not going to do this. I can't do it. So he asked me if that was an inconvenience or something for me. I said, well, I got a house in Pittsburgh. I got a house here. He asked me what I paid for the house in Florida. I told him what I paid for it. He said, I'll have a check for that for you Monday morning. You live in the house as long as you manage the Marlins. Wow. And you don't pay anything but your phone bill.
Wow.
So it really took care of me, know. And then I stayed a year after that. And of course, that was a disaster. They got rid of everybody. And it was too bad because Dave had those guys signed a good contract. Now, would we have won another World Series? I don't know, but we would have been competitive for a long time. We had Alex Fernandez, we had Bonilla, we had all those guys.
Sheffield.
Yeah, we had all those guys signed.
Moisés Alou, Sheffield, Bonilla. I mean, right, you guys were loaded.
Brown, Leiter.
Kevin Brown, Al Leiter.
Yeah, I mean.
Rob Nen. Rob Nen. I mean, I went back and looked at that roster.
Edgar Renneria, Young. Yeah. We were going to be good for a long time.
Yeah.
Whether we'd have won or not, who knows? But we'd have been right in there with the Braves, for sure. Yeah. Every year, we'd have been battling with the Braves, for sure. Would we have won? I don't know that. But anyways, but we did win a world championship. And we beat, and I think this is probably one of the big mysteries to me why nobody ever talks about this. we ended up beating the Cleveland Indians in the '97 World Series, and they had a powerhouse
The
lineup.
greatest teams.
Their starting pitching was good. It wasn't
Yeah.
great, but it was good. Okay, so, but what amazes me is when we won in '97, just to have the right to play in the World Series, we had to beat Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox. Three
That's
guys
right,
who went in
you
the Hall
forget.
of Fame within the last 5 years, I think.
Right.
We had to beat those three just to get there. So I thought that was almost as good an accomplishment as winning the World Series.
Right.
You know, I mean, the notoriety is not as much
Right.
and everything, but when you think, man, you look at that and say, we got a chance to go to the World Series, but we got to get through Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox.
Yeah.
That's not an easy day.
Did you feel a little redemption? Because looking back at the Braves
did.
teams, 91, 82, man, you couldn't get past them.
Right.
Now here we are in 97.
We beat them.
You beat them.
We beat them, we beat them 4-2 in the championship
Wow.
series, 4-2. And I love Bobby Cox, great friend of mine, and had all the respect in the world for that team. Great team, great organization. John Scherholz, and of course Chipper Jones was a great player there, and but I love to compete against them. I was tired of the Braves. They broke my heart a couple times. So it was nice to a little payback. I wish we could have done it in Pittsburgh, but we eventually did do it. But like I said, just to get to the World Series, we had to beat Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox just to get there.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I was torn during that World Series because I came up with the 97 Indians. I just got caught up in September,
Right.
and they obviously wasn't good enough to make the roster, so they shipped. I was in the Arizona Fall League. But it was funny because I was such a big fan of yours, Skip. Like, you obviously didn't know me then, but I was such a Pirate fan growing up that I was watching the Indians play, but I was thinking, man, I'd love to see Leyland win a
I'll tell you what I want you to do, because of all this stuff in today's game, they got this exit velocity. And in the top of the 11th inning, I want to say, the top of the 11th inning in the World Series, Game 7, Jim Thome hit a rocket to Craig Counsell for a double play. One hopper to Craig Counsell. And I would love to find out what that exit velocity was, because it might be the hardest hit ball I've ever seen in my life. Oh, it was.
How did Counsell feel?
I have no idea. It was totally self-defense, I think, but it was a one hop right there. I mean, it was a rocket.
Oh my God.
And I would have to guess that the exit velocity had to be 110 miles an hour. It had to be. And we turned a double play, and of course we won it in the next inning.
Can you take us back to that Game 7, especially at the end? Because what was it, 2-0 going in, 2-1? Was it 2-0 going into the ninth?
It was 2-1 going into the ninth.
2-1 going into the ninth. You had Jose Mesa coming in to close out the game. Who was one of the best closers in the game.
Yeah.
Can you just take us through what you were thinking as a manager?
Well, I mean, obviously, Jared Wright had pitched a great game for them. Young kid we didn't know much about, and he was a fireballer and pitched good. He really, pitched a great ball game.
Yeah.
And Bonilla hit a changeup out of the ballpark in the 7th inning to make it 2-1. So now we're going to the 9th with Mesa, and this is it. I mean, there's this is it, and we were fortunate enough, to get a couple of hits in that inning, and we got a sacrifice fly by Craig Counsell. The funny part about it is I think we had guys maybe on first and third when that happened, and we tied it up. But Counsell he hit a ball. No, somebody else hit a ball to right field to Manny, and he didn't move. And if he had moved back to a normal position or something, the next ball that we hit would have been down. We probably would have won the game.
Right.
But he stayed there and it caught and went right to him. I forget exactly how it worked out. But anyway, we tied the game up. And it's good to talk about this World Series, because it's always good to get it off my chest. I always felt that World Series never got the credit that it deserved. Mm-hmm. And my contention is the home team wins Game 7, 3-2,
right?
Extra innings. Okay, 3-2, so pretty good pitching.
Heck yeah.
Not a sloppy game for sure.
Right.
Okay, although Tony Fernandez made an error, God rest his soul. But anyways, so the home team wins 3-2. It starts on Sunday. It ends on Monday. It ended after midnight. There was so many things. It was the first time that the home team came back trailing in the 9th inning to win a World Series at home.
Wow.
And I always said, had that game been between the Yankees and the Mets, or the Yankees and the Dodgers, it would have gone down as one of the greatest Game 7s of all time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's really never gotten the credit because it was the Indians and the Marlins. I believe that in my heart. And I'm not upset about it. I'm just making a point.
Yeah.
But can you imagine had that game been the Mets and the Yankees?
Yeah.
Game 7, extra innings, 3-2, or the Yankees and the Dodgers?
One of the greatest games ever.
One of the greatest 7th games in the history of the game. I think they had it ranked like 7th or 8th or something.
Right.
But I think it would have gone. I mean, they had the Yankee game against Arizona rated ahead of it. It surprised me. When Arizona beat the Yankees. But it's neither here nor there. But that was one of the greatest 7th games in the history of the World Series.
It really was.
And it just wasn't between the right two markets.
Right. Two low markets, exactly. On that team, you had so much star power. I mean, obviously, Gary Sheffield, who I know you love, was with you in Detroit.
Great player.
Can you talk about Sheff a little bit? Because I played with him. I on the show a few weeks ago, we had Adam Dunn, and we brought up we ran in Atlanta in 2003, and Sheff's up there doing his thing. Wham! He hits a rocket to Dunner and left. It skips off the ground, hits Dunner in the shoulder, and it ricochets, wherever it ricocheted. And I'm thinking to myself, it looked like Adam Dunn was playing in for the bunt, and a little guy, Gary, he could hit the ball so hard. And I look back at his numbers, 500 career homers, all the things that he did, more strikeouts than walks. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Can you talk about Gary Sheffield and what it was like managing him? I can sum it up best, I think, by saying this, and I don't think he's really ever gotten the credit that he deserves. I don't know whether it's because he played with so many teams or what. But I will tell you this: I was managing the Pirates when Gary Sheffield was at San Diego, and I managed it against Gary Sheffield for a long time, and I was fortunate enough to be his manager. I can tell you this: there was a stretch of, I don't know exactly the amount of years, but it was several years. There was a stretch that, without question, Gary Sheffield was the most feared right-hand hitter in baseball. Wow! I don't care what anybody tells me. There was a stretch. I'm not sure exactly how long it was, how many years. There was a stretch that he was the most feared right-hand hitter in baseball. And then I was fortunate enough to be his manager a little later on in his career in Detroit, but really one of the best right-hand hitters of all time, without question. Great arm, could run. When he was a young guy, could run, had a great arm. Right. And didn't strike out. No. For that violent of a swing. He hit 500 home runs, but you didn't really think of him as a home run hitter because he didn't hit the big, long, high ones. He hit rockets, line drives that went out of the ballpark. So a lot of times I think people didn't really think about him as a home run hitter. Right. But, he's hit 500 plus. Yeah, pretty impressive. Yeah.
Also, when you go back, follow up on that real quick.
One second. Okay. One second. Yeah. When you go back to Game 7, I know they had a team meeting before the game, and Sheff talked a little bit. And one of the things he mentioned was, at the end, I don't think you were in there for this, but he had said something like, hey, let's go win this for the guys in the room. Let's go win this for the fans. And let's win this for the guy that's been in the minor leagues 18 years, that's finally get a shot to play for a world championship. Like, can you, what did that mean to you to hear that from a guy like Gary Sheffield? I didn't really know about it. I heard about it afterwards, and obviously it was very touching. I had talked to the team and I had my speech, and I remember I told the team one time, I was trying to tell them how important it was to win, but I said, people just don't remember who lost. I said, who won Game 7 of the World Series last year? And somebody said, I think it was so-and-so. And I said, no, there wasn't a Game 7 last year. There was only 6 games last year. So it just goes to show you that people forget about stuff unless you're the winner. Right. So that was kind of my theme, And then Sheff, I did mention this from what I understand to the players afterwards, which was very flattering, very touching. Yeah. And, greatly appreciated. But, like I said, I love the players. Yeah. I mean, I had my moments with players. I'm sure there's some don't like you, there's some do like you. But I love the players because I knew how hard it was to play, and I loved competition. And I was a competitor in my own way, even though I wasn't good enough to be a player. In your own way as a manager, it was an honor for me to manage against the St. Louis Cardinals, New York Mets, New York Yankees. That was an honor. Yeah. I mean, I took that as a special honor to go into Yankee Stadium in the playoffs. We beat them 3 times in the playoff in the postseason. Yep. That's a thrill for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, people could make light of it. They could say, a big deal. Well, it was a big deal to me. Yeah. Here's this guy that never got out of Double-A and everything, and all of a sudden I'm managing the bright lights at Yankee Stadium or Comerica Park or Three River Stadium. Right. I'm saying, here I am, this guy, I mean, that was an honor. Yeah. Simple. Yeah. You got one, Chase?
Yeah, no, what I was going to say kind of plays off what you were saying. And everybody I've ever worked with who had been former baseball players or managers or whatever, you ask him about Gary Sheffield because he did play for so many different teams. And in the media, he was always looked at, oh, you don't want Sheffield on your team. He's a cancer. But everybody I ever talked to that played with him says he was one of the better leaders, one of the guys you would always want on your roster. Would you guys?
Dude, one of my favorite teammates. I got to play with Chef in 2007 with Detroit. One of my favorite teammates. One of the quietest guys on the team. I felt like, kind of did his business. He showed up, was in the cages every day, working hard. And I don't know, for me, one of my favorite teammates.
He was great on the team. I found out a lot of times over my years in baseball, and I'm not talking about Sheffield. I'm talking in general. I found out during my career that some guys would say, you'd be talking about trade for a guy, and some of the baseball people would say, oh, you don't want that guy. Yeah, bad for the team, blah, 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 blah. You got that guy, and he was one of the best players, best teammates I ever had. And then on the other side of that coin, they say, oh, man, get that guy. Get that guy, man. He's really good. He's really good. Got him. He was one of the worst. So it's misleading.
Right.
One thing, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. One thing that always bothered me. I had a couple of coaches one time come up to me and they said, hey, this guy over here, the other team, he really wants to play for you. He really wants to come here bad. He really wants to be over here. I said, okay. And then the next day, I'd talk to my coach and I'd say, you tell that guy that told you that he will never play for me. Because if he's doing that to his manager, he's going to do the same thing to me.
Oh, yeah.
So go tell him that thank you, but no thank you.
Wow.
So after you leave Florida, Skip, there's so many, unbelievable players that you've managed. And one of the guys, when you went to Colorado, one of the guys just went into Cooperstown a couple of weeks ago, and Larry Walker. And I remember we had a conversation one day, and we were talking, and I said, man, Skip, it's amazing some of the guys you've managed. Gary Sheffield, Barry Bonds, Miguel Cabrera. We go down the list of guys. And I said, man, who's the most talented player you've ever managed? And what did you say?
I said that Barry Bonds was the best player I ever managed, but Larry Walker was the best 5-tool player I ever managed. He could do everything. He could, Barry couldn't throw quite as good.
Right.
But Barry was better, obviously. But Walker could throw, he could run, he could hit with power. He was a great defender. He was a great base runner. Probably he and Andy Van Slyke, the two best I ever saw. This guy was a unbelievable talent. We also had Vinny Castillo and Dante Bichette, and his son's playing really good now. Yeah. I think Dante helps out a little bit. So, it was, I just did a bad job there. I couldn't manage there. I was a pitcher's manager. And you just couldn't run a pitching staff there in those days. It might be a little bit different now. I think they've changed some things, but I just did a bad job. I felt terrible about it. Didn't stay there and went home and really basically went to work for the Cardinals.
Yeah, but you can't do a bad job in the elevation like that. I mean, come on. It's like you put the right pitch out there, and the guys breaking balls break the same way.
It was sad because, believe me, I tried and I gave everything I had. It was just it ate at me because your starting pitcher could pitch a good game and give up 7 runs.
Right.
Yeah. It's true.
Crazy.
Yeah, and so
was Darryl Kyle there when you were there?
Yes, Darryl Kyle. He lost 20 games.
Well, that's what I was saying because I faced Darryl Kyle in Colorado when I was just starting. It was my second year in the big leagues, '99. Then he goes to St. Louis, and I'm like, where did this curveball come from?
Right.
Like I was like, that curveball in Colorado in that elevation didn't do anything.
Right.
I would hope Darryl Kyle would throw me a curveball because I feel like I could hammer it.
Right.
He gets to St. Louis, throw me that same curveball. I'm like, damn, this thing's breaking. This thing's making hard, sharp, 12-6.
He was really a good pitcher. He went from losing 20, I think maybe to winning 20 in St. Louis.
In St. Louis, yeah.
So, it was just and Pedro Ocasio had a good year for us out there in Colorado.
Yeah, he had good stuff.
He was good pitcher. But it was just tough. We had the general manager of the Mariners, Jerry DiPoto, pitched on that team.
Yeah.
8 years. But anyways, it just – I felt terrible because I know I disappointed Jerry McMorris and Bob Gebhardt, and I felt bad. I just didn't do a good enough job, and I couldn't manage it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. So you end up going to the Cardinals, and you scout, right? For a few years, you scout, and but then after that, you get back into the game in 2006. Thank God, because I was part of that. But Can you talk about that? Like, did you think you were done managing, or did you know you had another run left in you?
No, I thought for sure when I left Colorado, I didn't think I'd manage again. I really didn't. Yeah, and I think maybe it was just burnout or what it was, but I was just frustrated. And I really didn't. And even after the first couple of years working for the Cardinals, I worked for them from from 2000 until 2005. And even the first 2 or 3 years there, I never even thought about it. I'd go down and I'd help Tony in spring training. I'd dress out. I'd hit fungos, maybe throw some BP, not much BP, but I'd, help out. And I'd go to all the games and maybe manage a B game for him or something, or meet him in the morning to help organize his program for spring training. But it was after about 3 years, I just saw the Cardinal players, how they bought into Tony's program, the veteran players. And it was really impressive to me. And the way they went about their business and, and the attitude that they had and the spirit that they had in the clubhouse. And they were good players, don't get me wrong, Edmonds and Rowland and all those guys. Pujols. But it just kind of pumped me up again. And I didn't think for sure that I would manage. But, when Dave called me after the 2005 season and asked me if I thought I was ready to manage again, I said, well, I'd like to give it a shot. And it was kind of special because I signed with the Tigers as a kid, and I was over there managing the minor leagues for a long time. Never got up to big leagues as a coach or manager. So they had Sparky and
it's pretty good manager.
So so I thought I'd be interested, and then I went up for an interview and I eventually got the job. So it worked out pretty good.
How did you change?
It took me a long time.
How did you change the culture there? I mean, because I think a few years earlier they lost 114 games or something, way over 100 games.
Yeah.
How did you change the culture in Detroit that quick? It was your first year.
Well, I think it started with a letter I wrote him in the winter before we went to spring training. I wrote all the players a letter, and I spoke basically about, you guys are such a talented team, but you're not a winning team, and you have so much talent, but you haven't shown that you know how to win. And I said, I want you to. I can remember most of this letter verbatim. I talked about. I want you to take the field like the New York Yankees, not cocky or conceited, but I want you to take it with a little swagger, like you belong there, and you better let the other team know that we're there. And I don't care who's in the division. I don't care, I don't care anything about that. The only thing I care about is the Detroit Tigers. And you guys don't know how good you are. I pumped them up in the letter, but I also told them, you got to learn to win. I knew they had some talent.
Yeah.
I knew they were talented, but they just, for whatever reason, they just hadn't learned how to win yet.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that letter to them. I think that's where it started. And then in spring training, we all got along good. I brought some coaches in like Gene Lamont and people like that. And
it was Pirates. It was Gene Lamont, Lloyd McClendon, Rafael Belair, Donnie Slott, Dan Slike. For me, it was like, oh my God, what about Pirate Fantasy Camp?
Yeah. And I always tried to bring in coaches that had quite a bit of experience, either managing the minor leagues or playing or whatever it may be, and guys that were at the right age where they could still do a lot of physical work, like throw BP and stuff, but they had a lot of knowledge, because sometimes you can get older guys, and I mean this respectfully, a lot older, that really can't do anything physically. They know a lot, but they can't do anything physically. You get young guys that can work real hard, but they haven't had any experience going through any of this. So I tried to get that combination of guys, that had some experience, like Gene managed a long time in the minors, Rich Donnelly, anyways, it just, we got off to a really good start. Chris Shelton, I think, hit 9 home runs in the first. And we got off to a really, really good start, and they started to get some confidence. And we went on, obviously, he came over, and we went on to win the American League Championship.
Well, it's funny because I want to go back to my first day there. You traded for me at the deadline. I was so excited because I was with the Pirates, and I always want to play for the Pirates. So it was a dream come true for me. But we were terrible.
Right.
And you really took me out of purgatory. You're like, hey, when you guys traded for me. And I remember that first day I came in Tampa, and the media's around my locker, and they're all like, hey, how do you like being here? I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to be here. I hadn't seen you yet. I'm so excited to be here. And, and then I saw the coaching staff. I'm not kidding when I say this either. Gene Lamont, Buccos, Lloyd McClendon, Rafael Bell. These are dudes. Donnie Slott, Sluggo. You kidding me? Used to back up Spanky. Advanced Lake, one of my idols growing up. You got to be kidding me. This guy, Jim Leyland's my manager. I'm like, this is so great. So I don't know if you remember this, but you come over, you grab, hey, Kay, I need to talk to Case real quick. And then I told the media, hey, I got to go hang out and see Skip, And so it was like such a cool moment for me. You dragged me through the training room. Next thing you know, I'm in your office. It's you, Gene Lamont and Lloyd McClendon, right? And I'm like, oh, this is like heaven for like the Pittsburgh kid, And it's still my 9th year in the biggest, but I'm still like a little kid, right? And you're like, all right, Case, great to have you, great to have you. He's like, let's Gino, why don't you go through the signs for Case? And Gino's like, Gene Lamont's like, all right, Case, you get in the box, boom, check me down here. I go through my signs, I go to my ear, it's hot. That means something's on. Boom, I go to my hat, it's a hit and run. Now I can take it off, stay with me. He goes, we're probably not going to give you the bunt, right? Well, okay, all right, Gino, I'm locked into Gene Lamont. Boom, and then you come in, you're like, all right, Case. He's like, now listen, on this sign, you go, I don't want you looking down the third at Gino. I want you to look in the dugout. If you get on first base with a walk or a hit, he goes, don't look over at Gene. I want you to look in at me. He goes, now you go, stay with me. If I come up to that top step and we catch eyes, as soon as we catch eyes, if I jump up and never come back down, you steal.
That's right.
That was my first conversation with Jim Leyland.
I jump up in the air and I never come back down. You go.
That's so great.
Oh
But
my
I thought the genius of the whole thing was this. I'm new. I don't know anybody. Like I really didn't know anybody. It was a nervous situation, but I was excited. And here you bring me into the office. I've never really had a conversation with you besides some passing conversations when you were with St. Louis and in Colorado. And the first thing you do is really break the ice with me. And like, it made me feel like, bam, I'm at home. I appreciate it. To this day, I would, want to say thank you for that conversation.
Well, we enjoyed having you.
Yeah.
You were a big piece for us too. You helped us a lot that year and you had a great World Series. And unfortunately, not a lot of the other guys did offensively. We kicked a lot of balls around. The pitcher included some balls. We didn't do good enough. They earned it. We did. We did. The conversation.
Yeah. At the end of the day, can you talk about your decision to have Verlander on that staff? Because he was a young kid, right? Was that your doing out of spring training, or was that Dombrowski? Who got Verlander on that staff?
It was always Dave Dombrowski that had the final say.
Right.
Dave Dombrowski had the final say to put the team together. He was really good at it, but in the particular case, which he was always good with me about, I had mentioned to him, when I got the job, you're going to let me take pretty much what I want to take. He said, well, within reason. The players I wanted to take because I knew about Verlander. I mean, didn't know him very well, but I knew about him and his stuff and everything. So not long after spring training started, I told Dave, I said, well, I want to take him and I want to take him. And it was Verlander and Zumaya.
Oh, wow, Zumaya.
Right.
I mean, 104 legit fuel.
I said, I want to take those two guys. And I can remember Dave said, well, okay, that's fine, but you don't know what they're going to do, And I said, no, I don't. But I know what those guys are going to do that lost you 120 games the year before that. And so I said, and Dave laughed about it. And he said, you got him, and he made the final call. I mean, I kind of pushed for it, but Dave was great. And he pretty much let me have what I wanted, but, within reason. But he would always have the final say. He was a great general manager.
What about Kenny Rogers on that staff?
Oh.
What about Kenny?
They told me before we got him, they said, this guy's tough.
Right.
This guy's tough to deal with. You're going to be tough. And I said, he can pitch, Kenny. They said, oh, he can pitch, but he might be tough. And I said, well, that's okay. Well, I met Kenny in the winter meetings, and we had a discussion, and a professional discussion. Kenny Rogers became one of the closest pitchers I've ever had in my life as far as an individual to me. I loved Kenny Rogers. I've had Kevin Brown and Verlander and a lot of great ones, Draybeck and him, but I've never had anybody that competed any harder than Kenny Rogers.
And he was like, as far as he could field his position like nobody.
He was a pitcher. I mean, this guy was a total pitcher. And I loved Kenny Rogers. I mean, and we're friends to this day. I mean, I don't see him very much anymore or anything, but I miss him for being around the game. He was a fierce competitor and just wonderful on the team. Great. And I did see him a few years after he got out. He'd come to spring training with the Tigers and help the left-handers work with their pickoff move. He had a great, pickoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great fielder and just a great guy. And just pitched wonderful for us. I think he might have won 17 games or something for us. He was terrific.
But can I follow up on one thing, Case? And I'm very sorry.
Go ahead, Chincha.
So I would never do this, but I have to ask while you're here. And Case, for 5 years, I never played this video. But can you just talk about the time where Casey hit the ball the opposite way and got thrown out at first base?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Sorry, Sean. I'm sorry. I love you. I love you. But you brought up going to the.
You mean when I got thrown out from left field and the only person in Major League Baseball history? What was your take on that, Skip?
Sorry.
Actually,
I want to be too much.
I actually felt bad for him, and I think I said something wisecrack when he came back. I was laughing. He was mad, obviously, and I was kind of laughing. I think he actually was mad at me because I was laughing. But you know what? I really didn't know anything else what to do. You had to make light out of it. I've never seen it before in the history of my life. You know, so I said to myself, I mean, what can I do? Can I get serious and say, hey, Case, you didn't run the ball out? Jesus Christ, the ball's in left field 250 feet away. I mean, I can't say you're not hustling. You know, Christ, some guy with a pop gun in left field threw him out at first.
No, it was Pablo Ozuna threw me out with an 80 arm. 80.
Okay. Well, anyway, but I felt bad for him, but it's one of those times in your life in baseball that you'll enjoy for the rest of your career because it's always good for a laugh.
Right.
I wasn't embarrassed for him. I just felt bad for him because I knew he was embarrassed.
I was embarrassed.
He was embarrassed, and you could see that. They come back to the dugout, and I really didn't know what to say. I just had my hand over my mouth, and I was laughing, and he let out with some expletives that weren't too good, I think, right toward me. But I had to take it because I was laughing at him.
I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry.
One thing I did appreciate that because I was embarrassed because I had prided myself on my game. I wasn't the fastest guy out there, but I was going to play hard every night.
Right.
If I ground out to the pitcher, I was going to sprint to first base.
Right.
You know, it's just the way I played it. So for that to happen, I thought Creedy caught the ball, blah, blah, blah. But after the game, and I think I thanked you for this, but, you know, I know that it looked bad. We were losing big to the White Sox. We were in competition with them in the Central. And after the game, I know a couple of reporters were serious when they said, you know, what did you think about Sean Casey not hustling or something down the line, which I would never, ever do. And I remember you really having my back. You know, I remember you got serious with one of the reporters saying, if you think Sean Casey doesn't hustle, like you don't watch Major League Baseball. So thank you for that. And I did mother F you when I came back in the dugout because I was like, what an asshole. This guy's laughing. I think the first 5-7-3 in the history of the game. I got my freaking manager laughing when I come back in the dugout. So Skip, 2012, you go back to the World Series against the Giants, I believe.
Right.
And that doesn't go, you know, obviously, first off, to get to the World Series is so hard. So, like, just to say that, you know, hey, you got back to the World Series. Listen, I understand, and anyone that's been in the business understands how hard it is to get to the World Series. It's so freaking hard. So I just want to throw that out there first. So you're back in the World Series, which is unbelievable, which shows how great of a manager you are. With that staff, you had Scherzer. Or was Scherzer on that staff? Scherzer,
Pfister,
Verlander, Pfister,
Sanchez.
Yeah, Sanchez. Can you talk about that team, but also talk about Max Scherzer? Because you know I never got a chance to play against him, but I've watched him and I'm like, wow, that guy's an animal.
I think that series when we got back, we felt like obviously going in, we thought we had the better team. We didn't prove it. So evidently we didn't, but we felt like we had a better team. I think the thing in that series was, if you remember, Pablo Sandoval hit home runs off Verlander in the very first game.
Yep.
And I think, and I take responsibility for this, but I think that took their team up here and it let our team down a little bit. And I kind of had a tough time getting them back, really, you know, even though it was one game, it was kind of a deflating game for us, you know. To get Justin, you know, who's one of the most fierce competitors and one of the best pitchers in the history of the game, you know, and just pitched great for us. So I think that's one of the things. And we didn't hit. We just didn't hit. So that happened. And then you move on to Max Scherzer. And, you know, when I think that there was a stretch there, him and Verlander obviously were so good. And there was a stretch in that year where Pfister and Sanchez were doing as good as they were. I'm not sure, but that might have been the year Sanchez led the league in earned run average.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, and Pfister pitched unbelievable for us. So our pitching staff was loaded. We were really good, you know. And Scherzer, Of course, Scherzer and Verlander, they're going to be in Cooperstown shortly.
Yeah.
Both of them should be, but just, I mean, great stuff, great competitors, just dynamite stuff. And I can remember, in Scherzer's case, I think we got him from Arizona, and there was a lot of people that felt in the industry, not just Arizona, but in the industry, there was a lot of people felt that because of his delivery that he might be hurt, he might not hold up. And as it turned out, his delivery is one of the things that made him great.
Right.
That flick from out here, kind of, and it's just all kind of life with velocity and, great changeup, breaking ball. One of the great pitchers of all time, just like Verlander. Blessed to have him. But I think some people tend to forget how valuable Fister and Sanchez were that year. They were both good,
Wow.
So I mean, we were good.
Yeah.
I mean, we were good. We just didn't hit much in that series.
That was the same as 06. 2013, you have the big series against the Red Sox. You're up 1-0 in Boston. Big Papi comes up in that big situation. Torrey Hunter goes over all that stuff. Can you take us back to that as a manager in that situation, of matching up against a guy like David Ortiz in that situation?
Well, what happened was I got Phil Koch up and I had Benoit, who was my best reliever. He was my closer. And I had to make a decision, and Phil Koch hadn't pitched hardly at all, and for a while. And I just said, we got to get an out here in the 8th inning. I'm going to go with my closer to get this out. And Joaquin, actually, threw the pitch he wanted to throw. He just didn't get it in a good situation. His changeup was his best pitch.
Right.
And he just didn't get it where he wanted to, and Papi hit it, and Torrey made a hell of an effort. And, that really turned the series around. And but in my opinion, it didn't cost us the series. It really turned us around. It really turned the series around. Don't get me wrong; it was a killer. And some people think that totally cost the series, and maybe it did. But in my opinion, the game 3 is the game that cost us a series. We went home because, in actuality, even though we lost that heartbreak game, and it probably did cost us a series, but even though we lost that game, we said before we went to Boston, let's get a split. Well, we got the split.
Yep.
Now we come home, and I think Lackey pitched against us and shut us out, and Verlander got beat 1-0. Napoli hit a home run.
That's right.
They beat us 1-0, and I thought, on top of game 2 being such a gut wrencher and everything, game 3 was the one that probably almost put the finishing touches on us.
Wow. So after that year, you decide to retire.
Right.
But I guess as a fan of you and looking at where you're at, you'd just gone to the World Series in 12. You lose in 6 games to the Red Sox in the ALCS, just missed going back to the World Series. Why was it time for you to walk away from the game?
Well, I knew in June I was going to retire.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I talked to Gene Lamont one day. We were on the road in Kansas City. We were actually sitting out at the pool having lunch. And I said, Gene, this is going to be it for me. The travel's getting to me. I'm getting older. I'm getting tired. And I said, I gotta handle this right with Dave. And he said, well, I think about it. And when you make the decision for sure, then you need to tell Dave one way or the other. I mean, or at least tell him if you're not coming back. So, it might have even been that trip. I said, well, I'm sure, Gene, this is going to happen. So I called Dave up and I said, hey, can I talk with you? And I said, Dave, I don't know what you're thinking about. Who's your manager going to be next year? He said, well, you're the manager next year. And I said, well, no, I'm going to retire.
Wow.
I'm going to step down. And we had a great conversation, and I knew it was time. And to this day, I know it was the right decision. I miss the players, I miss the competition, but I don't miss all the travel and everything. And I'm 76 years old. It was definitely the right decision, and I feel very comfortable with it. So that's how all that basically came about.
So this is such a great part of your career that I think just was like icing on the cake. The WBC, a few years later, you end up managing that squad, and it's the first time the U.S. had ever won the WBC. Now, if people ever pay attention to the WBC, there's some great players. And when you talk about Venezuela and Dominican and Puerto Rico and Japan and Korea, and then the U.S., it's the all-stars of the all-stars. First off, how did you get involved with the WBC? And also, Can you just take us through that? Because I know that meant a lot to you to win that
It
WBC.
did, and I can't be phony about it. I got to be honest with you. I was never a big fan of the WBC because I was losing my players in spring training. They weren't amped up yet, ready to play or anything, and I was scared to death we were going to lose, some of our most valuable players.
Right.
When that's thing. So I was really not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. I don't want to lie about it. So Joe Torre called me and he said that, we'd like you to manage the World Baseball Classic, and Rob Manfred talked to me, and I said, "Okay." I mean, you're never going to turn down the opportunity to manage for your country, right?
Right.
So I wasn't that keen on it, to be honest with you, at the time because I was nervous about it.
Right.
It's one of the best, worst experiences I've ever had, in the sense that we put together. Joe Torre got most of the players, to his credit. He was like the general manager.
So would Joe have to go into the clubhouse? Like, did you get the players before spring training, or do you go in the clubhouse?
For the most part, no, you did. But you had to wait with our Players Association. You had to wait to get the opportunity to talk to the players, and there was a time frame when you could talk to them, when you had to stay. You should stay away from them. But Joe kind of did all that, and I helped out, I guess, with a couple guys, but. That was a big chore to get that done, because, and anyways, the reason I say it was the best worst is because it was some of the greatest guys. Joe Torre got the right guys.
Yeah.
He definitely got the right guys for us. And when we went there, in 3 days, we had a couple little exhibition games and workouts down in Fort Myers. And I knew we really got a good bunch here. I don't know what's going to happen here because they're not amped up yet, ready to play, games and all that. Played a couple exhibition games. We lost a game to the Dominican, and then we won a couple games to start with, and we lost a game to the Dominican. But anyways, we were really good, and it turned out to be a tremendous experience. But there was stuff like, if you told people, they'd say they can't believe that goes on, but it does, and it's nobody. I understand it, but there would be pitching coaches from other teams, or possibly general managers, say, "Hey, my guy can only pitch 15 pitches tonight." Or, then they had a limit on the pitches and everything, but you were paranoid. You didn't want to get somebody's player hurt.
Right.
So we kept our limit. I was so proud of this. We never had a pitcher throw as many pitches as he was supposed to throw. He was always under that.
Wow.
So we always kept him under that, which I was very proud of, because there's a lot of pressure when you're dealing with somebody else's players. Yeah. And, if you'd happen to get somebody hurt or something, you'd never forgive yourself. So from that point, it was kind of a real nervous job, to be honest with you, but it was so rewarding. And I can remember Marcel Latchman telling me, who had been involved in it a couple of times. He said, "You're not going to believe this," but he said, "You're not going to believe the intensity of these games when it happens." He said, "I know World Series," and he said, but he said it's like that.
Wow.
The intensity is that high when you're playing in these games, and I found that to be true.
Wow.
And we were fortunate. We beat everybody. We got to the semifinals. We beat Japan 2-1.
Right.
Thank God Ohtani didn't pitch against us, I guess. But anyways, he didn't play.
Was Ohtani on that team?
No.
Okay.
And so we beat them 2-1 in the semifinal game, and then of course we played Puerto Rico in the finals, and we had kind of a big offensive showing, and we won 8 or whatever it was to 1 or wwhatever it was.
Right.
But 8-0, 8-1, but just a tremendous experience. But not all giggles and smiles. It was a lot of pressure as far as watching somebody's pitchers pitch and praying every night that he didn't come up with a lame arm or something. Really. I mean, and to kind of explain to their team's pitching coach, "Hey, we're not going to use this guy even the amount of pitches. We'll I think one guy said, "Well, you can throw him 13 pitches." I mean, I thought that was crazy. But
what is that?
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out either. But
what does that mean?
it was
That's like a really clean inning if you're throwing 13 pitches.
It was just, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes in that you'd be surprised. It's good stuff,
right?
And everybody's looking out for their own player, and I don't blame them,
right?
But it's not all that easy to do.
And are you getting phone calls from GMs? "Hey, man,
I didn't get any, but some of our people did."
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Were the players into it? Like,
oh man!
I remember Adam Jones making that catch in San Diego. That's the one moment. Like, I look back and I don't know. I think Manny Machado hit it too. Was his teammate in Baltimore?
Right.
I mean, what was that like when he pulled that back?
Well, that turned it around for us.
Yeah.
When we beat them in that game, because you had to get by Dominican. Dominican, they were all really good teams.
Yeah.
Venezuela, Dominican, Puerto Rico, all loaded. And just saw some of those lineups. You just said, "Oh my God, how are you going to get through this?" But we were pretty good too.
Yeah.
So just the right bunch of guys, the perfect temperature. I mean, they set the tone themselves. Our clubhouse was great. Everybody got along. We tried to play everybody as much as I could. Some guys got a little shortchanged, but it was just, to win that thing was just kind of a special treat to the end of my career.
Yeah.
And it was a big thing, because I remember the commissioner telling me, he said, when we got to LA for the finals, he said, "You've done a great job. You got to the finals. That's good. That's good. You did." And I said, "Hey, we're going to win this thing."
Wow.
And he looked at me. I said, "Oh, we're here to win. We're not here just to get."
I didn't come here to
get
second place.
The finals. And the commissioner was great about it. He loved it. It was a big thing for him. I think he really appreciated it.
Yeah.
And certainly Joe Torre did, who did a good job of getting assembling all those players together.
So that's so great that you got to experience that. The last thing I want to talk about is I want to go back to Miguel Cabrera, because he had hit the 500th home run the other day, and a few weeks ago, and he hit it to right center. And I remember we interviewed him at MLB Network, and he was like, "You know what?" I said, "That impressed me the most, because so much of your power was to right center, and to hit your 500th home run there was at his age was such a big thing." And he always said to me in the interview, he said, "I always tried to think like a small guy, but I was a big guy." And I remember one time at the All-Star game, I asked him what his approach was. He says, "I try to go to right center and react in." You just talk about managing him for all the years that you did, and just the kind of player that he was. And you managed him when he was the greatest player in baseball.
Well, I think he's right. I always, when I talk about Miguel Cabrera, I talk about this all the time, and I use it as an example today when you're talking to hitters or watching hitters or anything. I said, Miguel Cabrera, he swung like a little guy and hit like a big guy. There's so many guys in the game today that swing like a big guy and hit like a little guy.
Right.
There's a big difference. They're laboring. They're trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Miguel Cabrera was so fluid. He was a big man. He was thick man, but he had such good elasticity. And without question, the best opposite field power I ever saw. Mm-hmm. I'm not, and like I said, I don't look for arguments. I don't compare players or errors or anything like that. I don't get into all that. But he's got the best opposite field power I ever saw. And that year he played a lot of years for me, and some of those years he was hurt. One year he had a broken foot. I mean, I think I wrote it in my speech that I'm going to give Friday night. The greatest single season performance I ever saw was Miguel Cabrera in 2012 when he won the Triple Crown. Yeah. He gets no leg hits.
Right.
I think he hit 44 home runs or something. I mean, all these
other in Comerica, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, and I just have never seen a, individual performance like that in all my life. So, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this Friday night. I hope they don't see this before I give my speech, because I started out in my speech saying how happy I was to be there, but I started out by saying Miguel Cabrera, and I think this is the best thing you say about him. He played hard, he played hurt, he played humble, but most importantly, he played happy.
Wow. Huh.
Throughout his career.
Wow. He enjoyed being out there. Wow.
Am I done?
No, you're not done. One more thing.
Well, wait, hold on. Right? Yeah, go ahead.
Cooperstown. To me, you're one of the best managers ever played in the game. And to a man everyone knows the history of Major League Baseball, we know you're one of the best managers ever played. You have the track record of the World Series, of the pennants, of going back to the World Series. What would that mean for you to get into Cooperstown one day?
Well, I think it's up to other people. I'm not going to campaign. You really got to have kind of people kind of pushing you for that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I do, so that's okay. I don't really. It's not. I'm very content with my career. That would obviously be the ultimate. I'll go on record as saying I don't know if I should be in.
Yeah, you should.
But I will say this. And maybe people are going to take this wrong. I'm not sure if I should be in or not, but I think I should be considered.
Yes.
And, if I'm considered and I don't get in, fine.
Right.
If I'm not even considered, I would be disappointed. And like I said, I'm not really sure because I got a lot of losses. I understand that, but they'd have to look into all your. You start out with a team that loses 100 games a year before. Your track record is bad right to start. It takes a long, but I'm not going to get into politicking for myself. I'm just saying I don't know if I am, but I think I should at least be considered.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll politic and say you should be in Cooperstown.
Yeah.
You will be in Cooperstown one day. And I just hope to golf with you again here soon, Skip, so
We're gonna
that maybe
play.
my game will be a little bit better. And
That'd be
you
great.
don't have to crush me about being a career 300
Yeah.
hitting balls behind me.
That'd be great.
And I appreciate your time today, man.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Literally,
Great being with
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chinch.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
buddy.
brother.